Born Giles Perry Richardson, Jr. on October 24, 1930, in the small city of Sabine Pass, Texas, the man who would later become famous as the Big Bopper entered the world with the energy and charm that would later define his music. He was raised in nearby Beaumont, a working-class town surrounded by oil rigs and railroad tracks, where the rhythms of industry often blended with gospel choirs, country ballads, and rhythm and blues blaring from local juke joints. From a young age, J.P., as he was known to family and friends, showed signs of being a natural entertainer. He was quick-witted, full of laughter, and constantly mimicking voices and personalities. Though his surroundings were modest, his spirit was anything but. His father, Giles Sr., was an oil field roughneck who understood hard labor, while his mother, Elise, created a warm, music-filled home that nurtured her son's talents. As a teenager, J.P. was drawn to the exploding radio culture of the late 1940s. He idolized the DJs who seemed to command entire cities with their voices, and he quickly picked up on how rhythm, language, and comedy could hold an audience in rapture. After graduating from Beaumont High School, he attended Lamar College with dreams of pursuing a broadcasting career. However, the Korean War interrupted his plans, and he was drafted into the U.S. Army, where he served 2 years. Upon returning home, J.P. wasted no time. He landed a job as a disc jockey at KTRM in Beaumont, where his voice, warm, resonant, and full of personality, won over listeners quickly. He didn't just spin records. He created characters, bantered with fans, and cultivated a devoted audience. His time slot began to attract a younger demographic, and soon he became the most popular DJ in town. It was during this time that the name The Big Bopper was born. The nickname stemmed from his on-air persona and large physical frame, but it also captured something else: his over-the-top style, sense of humor, and love of rhythm and energy. He embraced the name completely, turning it into a brand that matched his showmanship. But J.P. wasn't content to play others' music forever. He started writing songs in his spare time, experimenting with melodies and lyrics that combined swing, rockabilly, and novelty humor. His style was infectious. His lyrics were cheeky, playful, often flirty, but they always carried a sense of controlled chaos, as if anything could happen in the next line. In 1957, he wrote White Lightning, which would later be recorded by George Jones and become a #1 hit. This success marked the beginning of J.P.'s rapid rise in the music world, not just as a performer, but as a songwriter, with a knack for earworms that stuck with listeners long after the music stopped. Then came Chantilly Lace. Recorded in 1958 and released by Mercury Records, Chantilly Lace exploded into popularity with its telephone-themed hook, upbeat tempo, and his trademark spoken-word delivery. It was cheeky, flirtatious, and completely different from anything on the radio. His signature intro, "Hello, baby," became instantly recognizable. The song wasn't polished in the traditional sense, but that was the magic. It was raw, fun, and unforgettable. Chantilly Lace climbed to #6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for an impressive 22 weeks. At a time when pop music was full of crooners and teen heartthrobs, the Big Bopper brought something fresh, an audacious performer who understood both radio and music from the inside out. He followed up with more recordings, including Big Bopper's Wedding and Little Red Riding Hood, which continued his pattern of humor-laced rock and roll, sometimes venturing into satire and parody. He was also a prolific writer for other artists. One of his compositions, Running Bear, recorded by Johnny Preston, would posthumously reach #1 in 1960. Another, Purple People Eater Meets the Witch Doctor, highlighted his love for novelty records and storytelling. In his personal life, J.P. was devoted to his wife, Adrienne Joy Frieda, whom he married in 1952. The couple had a daughter and were expecting their second child when tragedy struck. He was a family man at heart, often bringing humor and warmth to his home life, even as his career demanded long hours on the road and in the studio. By early 1959, J.P. had joined a winter tour known as the Winter Dance Party, alongside Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and Dion and the Belmonts. The tour was grueling. Poor planning meant the musicians traveled on freezing buses that constantly broke down, and most nights ended with exhausted performers sleeping upright in their seats. On February 2nd, after a particularly brutal stretch through the Midwest, Buddy Holly chartered a small plane to fly from Clear Lake, Iowa, to Moorhead, Minnesota, hoping to get some rest before the next show. The plane had only 3 seats, and Holly initially planned to take his bandmates, Waylon Jennings and Tommy Allsup. But fate intervened. J.P. had the flu and was struggling with the freezing bus conditions. He asked Jennings for his seat on the plane. Jennings agreed. Ritchie Valens then flipped a coin with Allsup for the last seat. Valens won. The decisions took minutes. The consequences were eternal. The Beechcraft Bonanza took off shortly after midnight on February 3, 1959. Within minutes, it crashed into a cornfield near Mason City, Iowa, killing the pilot, Roger Peterson, along with Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper. J.P. Richardson was just 28 years old. The news stunned the country. 3 young performers, each representing different sounds, styles, and audiences, gone in a flash. The term, "the day the music died," made famous by Don McLean years later, cemented the event as a cultural loss. But the Big Bopper's story didn't end there. He left behind a growing legacy of recorded music, a loving family, and a library of compositions that would go on to shape the genre. His son, J. Perry Richardson, was born 2 months after the crash. Later in life, Jay, known professionally as the Big Bopper Jr., would perform his father's songs on stage, keeping the memory alive for new generations. Interest in the Big Bopper's life continued through the decades. In 2007, his body was exhumed and examined to put to rest conspiracy theories about the crash. The autopsy confirmed he had died on impact, debunking rumors that he survived the crash and tried to crawl away. His remains were later reburied in a new casket, and the original was donated to the Texas Musicians Museum. Musically, J.P. left a body of work that captured a brief but explosive period in American culture. He wasn't the most traditional singer or the most refined guitarist, but he had a knack for performance, timing, and wordplay that few others could match. He could make people laugh, dance, and remember. Long after his death, his recordings continued to sell. Radio stations still play Chantilly Lace, especially during retrospectives of early rock and roll. His face has appeared on postage stamps, tribute posters, and in films about the era. Despite his short career, the Big Bopper became an unforgettable part of rock and roll history. His life was a whirlwind. In less than 29 years, he went from small-town DJ to national recording artist, songwriter, television performer, and rock and roll icon. His stage persona, the flamboyant, laughing, phone-calling showman, was just one side of a man deeply committed to his craft, his family, and his future. That future was cut short on a cold winter night, but his voice, boisterous, unforgettable, still rings through jukeboxes and record players, carrying with it the echo of a dreamer who managed to make the whole world laugh, dance, and pick up the phone to say, "Hello, baby."